Afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to see you all here, and those who are joining us online also very welcome. We had a couple of hiccups with the technology, so rather than using the microphones in front of us, I'm going to hold up a mic, but that shouldn't be a problem. Can you all hear me? Very good. So this is the debriefing for the 64th Ordinary BEREC Plenary Meeting, which took place last week in Sofia in Bulgaria, organized and hosted by our colleagues from CRC in Bulgaria. And the next plenary debrief will take place online again, and that's after the plenary as per usual. Keep an eye on the date, because due to travel arrangements it might shift a day, but we will inform you about that. Today's program consists out of two parts, with questions and answers between each of those two parts. So we will start with two presentations, then take Q&A, and then we do two more presentations and some remarks from me, and then we take a further question and answer session. So that's kind of the agenda for the day. And if you have questions, you can, well, the people here can raise their hand, of course, and can ask them. And the people online, we would like to ask them to put that in the chat, and we will pick it up here and assign them to the appropriate co-chair, or one of us here will be able to answer it. So let's go to that first set of presentations. And I'm delighted that here on my right we have Mr. Marko Mismaš from the Slovenian regulator ACOS, and he will be the chair for 2026, as you undoubtedly know, and he's here to present the work program for 2026. After Marko has spoken, we will call on the co-chairs of the Remedies and Market Monitoring Working Group, Annegret Greubel and Marco Benacoccio. Sorry, my Italian is not the way it should be. I'm sorry. To talk about the recently adopted BEREC opinion on the union-wide termination rates. But first, Marko, I'll hand the floor over to you to give us what you have to say on the work program for 2026.
Thank you, Robert, for the floor. So today I will introduce you the BEREC Draft Work Program 2026, which was confirmed last week on BEREC plenary meeting in Sofia, to be launched into the public consultation. So, structure of the work program and preparation process. So the 2026 work program has been developed in an inclusive and transparent manner, involving contributions from BEREC's working group, NRAs, EU institutions, and all other relevant stakeholders. Therefore, let me begin with a few words about the preparation process. So, in January this year, BEREC adopted the outline BEREC Work Program 2026, which reflected the objectives of BEREC's work in the upcoming year. In a first call for input to the work program, 2026 was launched with stakeholders from 3rd March to 10th April. And in the second step, I introduced the BEREC work plans for 2026 at the stakeholder forum in Brussels on April the 1st. I would like to emphasize that for the preparation of the 2026 work program, a qualitative approach was applied this year in evaluating the projects. We held numerous calls and exchanges with the working groups to ensure that the execution of the projects is feasible and their content is aligned with the group's remit and ongoing priorities. We also took into the account many internal and external comments and ideas to ensure the highest possible level of satisfaction with the 2026 work program. Through the year, our process remained as transparent as possible. After the BOR adopted the draft work program for public consultation last week, we published it right away next day. So this means that the public consultation will remain open until the 3rd of November. Adoption of the final work program is expected on the 65th BOR plenary meeting on the 4th of December. So new strategic priorities. The 4 objectives in Article 3 in the EECC remain the foundation for the work set out in BEREC's annual work programs and are the guiding force also for the work program 2026. In its 2030 action plan, BEREC developed these priorities into the building blocks to shape the regulatory activities in the coming years. The objectives of this work program are based on the draft BEREC strategy 2026-2030, which is also to be published at the last BEREC plenary in December this year. A strong focus has been put on the 5 high-level strategic priorities, which you can see on this slide. All work items we are planning for the next year fell under these key priorities: BEREC's other tasks and institutional and international cooperation. So type of the work items in work program 2026. We will again have 3 types of the projects. So first one are mandatory recurring projects, and these are the mandatory tasks resulting from the relevant legislative instruments like EEC, for instance. The second ones are carryovers. These are the projects which are started before 2026, for example, this year, and whose work will continue in 2026. And the third pillar are the optional projects, and these address topics of the highest current relevance. With their inclusion, we are integrating many important topics and subjects, taking into the account both internal and external, so yours inputs we received so far from and we might still receive during the public consultation period. So the main principles for the year 2026. I mentioned that the new BEREC strategy 2026-2030 introduces updated strategic priorities, which will be reflected for the first time in the work program. This work program focuses on the upcoming legislative discussions. BEREC plans to provide expert and independent advice to the co-legislators and to the European Commission. At the same time, by including the optional projects, many relevant and interesting topics will be covered. The current draft ensures a well-balanced working among the working groups for the 2026, also taking into the account the expected ad hoc work I just mentioned. In addition to that, I would like also to mention that in total, we have received 123 project proposals, both internal and also the external. A spare capacity is required to tackle the ad hoc work. We carefully assessed each proposal and incorporated many of them, some partially, others were merged with another project, and some work has also been postponed for the year 2027 and beyond. So our strategic priorities, you are all more than welcome to look into the document, which includes far too many projects to mention in this short time frame. But please allow me to briefly go through each strategic priority and highlight a few of them. For strategic priority number 1, the first priority is linked to the promotion of the full connectivity and digital single market. In next year, so 2026, depending on the European Commission schedule, BEREC will provide an opinion on the recommendation on relevant markets susceptible to ex-ante regulation. Regarding the state aid access conditions, BEREC plans to develop an overview of NRI's approaches on the used to evaluate the appropriate wholesale access conditions to fixed state aid-funded networks from both an economic and the technical perspective. The focus will be on both active and passive access services. In relation to access to existing physical infrastructure, according to Article 3 of the Gigabit Infrastructure Act, BEREC will work closely with the European Commission, which may provide guidance on the applications on the Article 3 GIA. And finally, BEREC will also continue its work related to the copper switch-off. These are just a few of the projects related to the strategic priority number 1, and the full list you can find in the draft work program, which is currently in the public consultation. The second is strategic priority number 2, which is linked to the support to the competition-driven and open digital ecosystem. I would like to mention that the Data Act designates experienced national authorities for enforcement. Several BEREC members are already designated. More will probably follow very soon. BEREC's role is key in areas such as cloud and edge switching, interoperability, compliant handling, IoT, and more generally concerning the impact of such services and the Data Act obligations on the telecom sector. The work related to the 5G network slicing will have limited scope and will address to what extent network slicing falls within the scope of open internet regulations and how NRAs should assess network slice implementations. It will also address how the Article 3 assessment regarding specialized services could be further clarified. BEREC will also continue to contribute to the implementation of DMA Digital Market Act and produce a report to further analyze the impact of AI on the competition dynamics and on internet openness, which can be defined as the ability of users to access and distribute information and content online without unlawful interference or discrimination, as well as their ability to innovate. The strategic priority 3 is linked to the empowering of end users. In 2026, BEREC will continue its work related to switching and termination of the contracts. Accessibility report will identify the solutions in place in different member states to meet the accessibility requirements established in the EECC and the European Accessibility Act, which came into the force already in June this year. Since 2017, BEREC has annually published also a report of the implementation of the Open Internet Regulation. And the work group served as an internal forum to discuss the national cases and questions in order to ensure a predictable and consistent application of the Open Internet Regulation. BEREC also intends to continue the ongoing work with the NRAs to their national measurement tools. The fourth strategic pillar is linked to the contribution to the environmentally sustainable, secure, and resilient digital infrastructure. Some sustainability topics will cover sustainability indicators, experiences of the market participant in implementation of the Code of Conduct expected by the end of 2025, and the environmental footprint of the AI in relation to the electronic communication networks and services. In next year, BEREC plans to continue collaborating closely with the NIS Corporation Group as well with the ENISA and the European Commission on the topic related to the resilience of the communication network, as foreseen in the follow-up to the NEVERS call, in order to develop the recommendation and possibly also other guidelines for increasing the network resilience. In the last years, fraudulent activities have become quite a big issue for both, for the operators and also for the end users. And the BEREC plans to put focus on identifying the current status of the matter and the most relevant developments that needs to be definitely addressed. And hopefully the final result of this work will be some kind of best practices on the combating fraud. And finally, the fifth strategic pillar is strengthening the BEREC capabilities and continuous improvement. Also important for us as for the whole market under the BEREC's Action Plan 2030, which sets the ambition of enhancing the BEREC's agility, independence, inclusiveness, and efficiency as a center of expertise. BEREC is continuously reviewing and improving its working practices to promote greater efficiency, to promote high-quality deliverables, transparency, and environmental sustainability. Other tasks planned, among other tasks, a special importance will be given, I already mentioned that, to the BEREC's input to the regulatory framework review and to the DNA proposal. As this work program focuses on the upcoming 2026 legislative discussions, BEREC will, as mentioned in the beginning, provide the expert and independent advice to the co-legislators and to the European Commission. Cooperation with the EU institutions and international organizations is increasingly relevant for addressing challenges. We are not in a bubble, we are tied in the international environment. BEREC will continue its efforts in close cooperation with the European Commission to foster dialogue and collaboration with the sector associations, institutions and the policymakers involved in the digital regulation, as well with NRAs outside the European Union. And what comes next? Please, I'm inviting you, all of you, to visit the public consultation sector on the BEREC website for further information, and please provide your valuable views and contributions to the draft BEREC Work Program 2026 before the 3rd November 2025. After that, the final adoption is expected in December 2025. And after that milestone, I assure you that as a incoming BEREC Chair of 2026, that together with my ACUS team, together with all the BEREC's working groups, and with the support of the CN and the BOR, we will work hard as every year to ensure a smooth and efficient implementation of the work program 2026. And again, please visit the web page for further information, and the email, which is currently on the slide, is the point of contact where you can submit your inputs. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Next, I will call, I'm not going to try it again, the other Marco, who's with us here to talk to us about our opinion, the BEREC opinion on the Europe-wide termination rates. Marco.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Okay, I have to manage. Yeah. Okay, a few words on the background of this opinion. The European Commission started the review process of the Commission Delegated Regulation setting single maximum union-wide mobile and fixed voice termination rates within the Union, which are called, say, more friendly Euro rates. And the core of the review is to assess whether the imposition of single maximum union-wide termination rates remains necessary. And of course, taking into utmost account the opinion of BEREC that has been directly engaged by a letter of the Director General of DG Connect, while there has been a parallel public consultation, and the opinion we sent to the Commission does not cover all the questions and represents a collective view based on a survey among the NRAs. The outline, it is, let's say, organized in 5 chapters where questions and answers are organized into a logical framework and homogeneous sections. Main contents of the opinion, first on the effects and contribution of the error rates to the objective of the code. Namely harmonization, market dynamics, prices, and so on. So the main highlights is that the error rate induced no major impact in market dynamics and or competition. And the main reasons is that efficient models already were applied by NRAs before the delegated regulation entered into force. As a side effect, we see less disputes on the market, including less cases in front of the national courts. And we can say that euro rates based on one cost model at the European level reduce the regulatory burden. All these highlights that the delegated regulation is a good example in terms of simplification and harmonization. And in terms of strict evidence, we saw a decrease of termination revenues due to the lower euro rates for the incoming calls, with some potential problems of cost recovery for operators, especially in smaller markets. A potential risk, which is very difficult to measure, is the induced effect of increasing prices in the unregulated markets, such as external transit price, since the total price paid is the transit price plus the euro rate, which is kept only the second part of the price. A second section relates to non-price problems, which are not addressed in the delegated regulation. And our conclusions is that NRAs shall address non-price competition problems in case of specific anti-competitive behaviors. Possible issues in relation to, let's say, non-price, which means not directed to the euro rate, is the charging of high rates for ancillary but necessary services, such as, for instance, collocation, We know that the euro rates includes the cost just for the interconnection links, and this is in this sense, in the review process, clarifications may help. The conclusion is that NRAs, when needed, should have the power to adopt symmetric decisions to still keep on regulating termination markets when it's necessary and to settle disputes. Again, a side, let's say, issue which relates to the definition of interconnection. The delegated regulation should be understood, in our view, as apply to physical and logical interconnections, as in the code is specified, regardless of the technology. And this means that only interconnections providers in this light, so technical and physical and logical interconnection, are eligible to charge termination rates and not over-the-top operators. Third section, calls originating from numbers of non-European or EEA operators, and this relates to the issue of non-reciprocity. Euro rates, as a basic principle, do not apply to calls originating from numbers of non-European or EEA operators, a symmetric regime, with the exception of two specific cases. This is perfect in principle, but termination rates for non-European operators calls are still an issue due to a lack of transparency. First, there is a complexity in negotiation with these counterparts, mostly when no direct interconnections with non-European operators, so the need to use international transit carriers, where the termination prices plus the transit rates can be, let's say, not, clear in the sense to identify which is the part related to termination prices. And without a breakdown of the total price, operators are generally unable to determine which non-EU operators apply termination rates equal or lower to the euro rates. And moreover, operators of third country, even transit operation, could spoof CLI in order to avoid termination rates higher than euro rates. So we suggest that in the revised delegated regulation, there should be a clear indication of the country codes to which euro rates apply. We propose the creation of a specific summary sheet hosted by NRAs or by BEREC in order to allow operators to include directly the voice termination rates and to include a provision in the delegated regulation stating that operators are not bound to apply euro rates to termination in case the CLI is missing, invalid or fraudulent. Further proposal for improvements, apart from technological and service neutrality, a clear statement of which costs are included in the termination rates, in order to also the way to address fraud-related matters, which is a limit to the full and fair application of this regulation. And the point of attention relates to SMS termination rates, which are not included in the regulation, because from 1st January on 29, operators shall not apply different retail prices to consumers for domestic communication or and intra-EU communications. And we saw a risk of unfair competition at the wholesale level due to asymmetry in SMS termination EU. So we propose or to consider either including SMS termination in the delegated regulation, which is a stronger option, or at least to foresee a comprehensive evaluation by the European Commission addressing the issue. Last part relates to the level of the termination rate. So we discussed about how they are important, but we are not talking about their level, the level of the caps. BEREC was not asked specifically to consider the proposed level of euro rates. Nevertheless, we noted that the updated roaming model by the Commission foresees clear cost savings for mobile data and voice roaming services after including 5G technology, while the decrease is less marked for voice termination services. So the contribution of 5G is less relevant for voice termination services. Then we conclude that it could be justified to maintain the current level of the euro rates. And that's it. We sent already our opinion to the European Commission, and I think it's on the way to be published on our BEREC website. Thanks.
Thank you, Marco. I will now pause to take any questions as agreed earlier. So I see one hand there. Please go ahead. We'll get a mic to you. 1 second.
Okay, perfect. This is Pinar from ECTA. So I would have 3 questions. Let's using the logic of LIFO, last in, first out. First to Marco Benacchio, and then I would raise 2 questions to Marco Mismas. So to Marco Benacchio, you pointed out that there can be some price increases in the unregulated markets such as external transit. Very interesting one. I was wondering whether there have been any detailed data sharing in the survey that you have performed with the NRAs. And I was also wondering whether there have been some discussions internally in order to monitor this issue, and if there were some ideas on how to deal with it eventually. And if you want, I can also raise the questions to Marco Mismas so that you have all the... Okay. It was very interesting to see in the point of the resilient networks the issue on combating fraud, which is very much welcome. And we were wondering which form will your output take? A report on best practices, an exercise of benchmarking for seeing which NRAs take which kind of measures. And if you are collaborating actively in this moment, because as you may know, you already know probably, that there is this payment services directive review, which is creating, at least from our side, issues, as there is this question of liability between the financial institutions and the telecom operators. And as you know very well, we are mere conduits, and we are bounded by the strong rules of correctly prohibition of the deep packet inspection. So there are some boundaries that the telecom operators could not be retained responsible and liable for those issues. And this is the first question. And the second question is about peer review process. So we have seen that since, if I'm not wrong, last year, there has been improvement in terms of transparency from the RSPG meetings, but we were wondering if something more can be done, because what has been already done has been much appreciated, but maybe it would be better to give some more details on the discussion points that are subject at the RSPG meetings, especially on the forthcoming spectrum renewals slash auctions and the issues around harmonization. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that I can collect now? No, I have one question via the chat function, and that is regarding 5G network slicing. Will this process include, and Marco announced that we were going to look at network slicing. Will this process include a public consultation with stakeholders? Let me answer that one, and then I'll give the floor to both Marcos. Very simple question, and the answer is yes. We have already started, of course, in workshops looking at network slicing and what kind of clarifications BEREC or the Commission could give in order to give operators more confidence to invest in that. I think we're now going to go one level deeper, and we will definitely be looking at opinions from stakeholders to come up with the best guidance that we can possibly give. It's in our interest as regulators to make sure that investment can be made. So that is the objective for this particular project. So a full-hearted yes. And now I'll go back to Marco to answer the question about that were asked on from ECTA side.
Okay, I start. So let's start from the point that international transit is unregulated, and which means that we did not have the possibility to work on data from NRAs due to the monitoring activity. So our reasoning was more at the, let's say, incentive level, and we consider that NRAs should be the focal point to monitor, and if some distortion in its markets still would play an important role, and in case come back to, let's say, BEREC as a collecting point of a different situation, and for which I can say also we are waiting for also the DNA proposal as an overall view of the market, the Commission and regulation the Commission will have for the near future.
Thank you, Marco. And I hand over to the other Marco for...
Thank you for the floor, Robert. So the first question was regarding the network resilience. So on this topic, we will share the best practices, because you cannot just prepare one and copy that to all the states. Important is that we will gather together all the best practices, and then this should be assessed by every country to get the best out of it, because, as I said, cannot be copied. On the fraud, I think the approach here is the same. We should look together on the best practices and to share this over the external workshops. On a RSPG peer review process, here maybe the new legislative environment will be, let's say, a good point to assess this process and to make it better. Thank you.
Good. We have a few more hands. I see at the back there, Vodafone, and then we come to MVNO Europe.
Thank you very much. Just two questions. Sorry. Switch. Just two questions. One on the external workshop on migration copy switch off. So we understand that in the context of the DNA, and we understand that further proposals are coming in the DNA. We've heard also talks about a toolbox, etc. And so just to understand a bit more, what would be your focus of this workshop, how you see it? And the second question with regard to the opinion on the review of the relevant markets recommendation. So we understand that is being delayed. So it's not going to come, the recommendation in December with the DNA, but further down the line. And just to know, what is the timelines that you are working with? So everyone is wondering when this recommendation is going to come, how much is going to be delayed. So in case you have any points you can share. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Yves Blondel of T-Regs. It's more a reaction to Marco Benaccio than a question, but it's broader. So your answer to the question on external transit is that the NRAs don't really have the data because the market is deregulated. I think there's a theme there that if markets are deregulated but problems appear to exist or might emerge in the future, I think a good practice for BEREC would be to continue to monitor markets post-deregulation. The regulatory accounting in practice document does that to some extent, and I think that's very useful. And I think I've said on the record before that I think nothing should be removed from that report, even if markets are removed from the recommendation on relevant markets. And if we are going to a future with 0 markets in a recommendation or with no recommendation, I think a commitment on the part of BEREC and NRAs to continue monitoring the state of markets post-deregulation would be very valuable. So that is my overall reaction to this more specific point that we've heard.
Thank you very much. Let me answer the last question that Vodafone asked on the recommendation on relevant markets. Yes, we heard the same, that the Commission was planning to come with a package in December, and that this recommendation on relevant markets will now come later. Still, we just gave our views as part of the public consultation that the Commission was holding. As soon as the Commission publishes their recommendation, you know that as BEREC we also have to give, by law, have to give our views and opinions, and we will do that then again. But when that will be, I don't know. That's a question for the European Commission. And then Marco.
Thank you, Robert. I will answer the questions regarding the external workshop for the copper switch off. I think the aim is that it is a very good opportunity that the NRAs can present to all the stakeholders their view, good practice, and how the process shall and should be done of the copper switch off, and also to propose the improvements of the legislative environment.
Great. I see no further questions, so that's kind of the end of part 1. Just one comment. I see quite a lot of people taking photographs of the slides. Perfectly okay, but they will be available on the BEREC website, all the presentations, so you don't have to necessarily do that. Good. Let's go to the second part then of this meeting. Thank you all for those who contributed to the first part. And now we're going to be joined by the co-chairs of the Fixed Network Evolution Working Group. That's Alexander Taylor, who's online, but here with us today is François Weber from ARCEP. And they will present the recently adopted guidelines that BEREC was required to develop under the Gigabit Infrastructure Act. And then, as the second part, we will hand over to the co-chairs of the End-User Working Group, who are sitting to my left here, Marina and Indre, who will present a summary report from the external workshop on practical issues preventing number misuse and possible fraudulent activities as a result of new technologies. And then I will also give a quick update on some other recent and upcoming events, and then we'll do the same and we'll give you the floor for questions and answers. But first, François, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. So, as Robert just said, BEREC was tasked with the development of 2 sets of guidelines regarding the Gigabit Infrastructure Act. And I will present first the first set on Article 5 and then the set about Article 11. So as a reminder, the Gigabit Infrastructure Act was adopted last year, and it will fully replace the BCRD directive on November the 12th next month. Its aim is to facilitate and stimulate the rollout of very high capacity networks with a lot of provisions, including access sharing to physical infrastructure, coordination of civil works, permit granting facilitation, and gathering of information and procedures into electronic single information points. Article 5 is the article dealing with the obligation for physical infrastructure owners to meet any reasonable request to coordinate civil works. On this article, BEREC was tasked to develop guidelines on 3 points: apportioning the costs associated with this coordination, the criteria the dispute settlement body should follow in case a dispute arises on coordination of civil works, and a more precise one, which I will explain a bit better later, but about a possibility to be exempted to coordinate in some cases, but with a few points which needed to be clarified. Regarding apportioning of the costs, BEREC considers that we should distinguish directly attributable costs, which should be borne by the party causing them, and shared costs. So for shared cost, they should be analyzed on a case-by-case basis and based on objective criteria. But we tried to provide some guidance on what these objective criteria could be. And so we recommend the use of objective formulas, and we provide a few ones reflecting either an equity or a proportionality principle. And then we also provide a few examples of how these formulas can be applied. Then, regarding criteria to settle disputes, most of what we say in these guidelines would apply, in fact, to many other disputes that DSBs can have to decide on. So I won't develop them, but we deal with the transparency of the procedures, independence of the DSB, and that kind of topics. The main topics we tried to develop in the guidelines regarded information sharing. Because when you look at GIA on this particular topic of coordination of civil works, the time constraint on the DSB is to settle the dispute in 1 month, which is very demanding and can only work if all information is provided at the very beginning of the procedure, in fact. So this is why, first, if this is not the case, the DSB will likely have to suspend or extend the 1 month deadline I just talked about. And then it also means that we need to be very clear on what information we need to settle the disputes in 1 month. And that's why we provide a list of suggested items for the DSBs. And finally, we also suggest an optional standard agreement model to smooth negotiations. Finally, regarding the last point, so I will explain without the slide. The last topic is that when you are civil engineering, you are conducting civil engineering works, you can be exempted from the obligation to coordinate with a party asking you to do so if this party is an operator who failed to answer a recent call for interest in deploying fibers. But in that case, you have to deploy enough civil engineering infrastructure for future foreseeable needs in the area in exchange for not doing the coordination. So we were asked to explain how this could work, and we proposed a very simple scheme where first you estimate the number of end users and their reasonable needs, which means that you don't only take into account how many people are in the area, but also are there mostly households, are there mostly businesses, and that kind of things, because the needs can change. From that, you deduce a volume of fiber, and from that, you deduce either type and number of poles or a width of ducts. So that's for Article 5. So we launched a public consultation based on what I just described, which took place from 11th of June to 11th of July. We received 17 answers. Overall, in our view, the draft guidelines received support. We did have negative feedback on some aspects, but most of them were not criticizing really what we wrote, but GIA itself. And the role of these guidelines cannot be to replace or negate GIA, so all these criticism could not be taken into account. We did make some changes. You can see in the final version we uploaded. The main one I wanted to point out was that several respondents pointed out that if we really want to put into force our splitting of the shared cost, we needed information about this shared cost, and so there should be a transparency obligation associated to it, and you can find a recommendation to that regard in paragraph 31 of the guidelines. So this was for Article 5, a similar presentation on Article 11, so I will skip the shared slides. Article 11 is the one about sharing of physical infrastructure inside buildings. And the legal mandate was to develop guidelines on the terms and conditions of this access and on procedural guidance for the dispute settlement bodies as for Article 5. Regarding the terms and conditions, first we dealt with the price. In our view, when the in-building physical infrastructure is owned by the building owner, the access should be provided for free. Because first, that's what is already the case in most member states. And second, the goal of GIA is to roll out faster and at a lower cost. And anyway, for us, we see that having fiber provides value added for the building owner. In some cases, but in most countries, we will be in the first case, but in some countries, you will find situations where, in fact, the infrastructure is owned by an electronic communication network operator. In that case, it might be reasonable that there is a cost for him and he has to get paid for that. But in our view, it should be based on evidence, so bills, for instance, and we recommend a very simple methodology. And last point, delays should be kept reasonable, and we suggested, even though in our view it's not at all an obligation, and we tried in the latest versions after the public consultation to be even clearer on the fact that it's not an obligation. In some cases, sharing fiber itself could appear a better practice than sharing the infrastructure, especially when there is a lack of space. So it could be useful to consider it too. Regarding criteria to settle disputes, I will be very fast because it's quite the same as for Article 5. We have a very tight time constraint, so information sharing is key. If not, there will be extension of suspension of the 1 month deadline, and we tried to provide a list of suggested information demands, even though we didn't manage to get as far as on Article 5. So we had a public consultation in the same period as for Article 5. We received a bit more answers, 20. Again, mostly support. We received comments mostly on pricing of the access, fiber sharing, and the possibility to issue provisional orders. So in our view, the last point, issue provisional orders, is already covered in the guidelines. For pricing of the access, there was no consensus around the respondents, so we decided to stick to our initial proposal. And for fiber sharing, we made the clarification I talked about earlier. And that's it for me.
Thank you, François. We will now turn to the co-chairs of the end-user working group, Ms. Indra Jurgeljonine from RRT in Lithuania and Marina Lubic-Karanovic from HACOM in Croatia, to present a summary report, as I said, from an external workshop that we did on number misuse and possible fraudulent activities. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Robert. So as far as we have already a few times heard on fraudulent activities and issues raised and questions, so we believe that this workshop was very timely and very useful for us as well as for the audience. So to begin with, and to delve a bit deeper into that, why we started investigating it. In our recent opinion on under Article 1 to 3, it's basically evaluating the impact of trends and developments that might have effect on end users' rights. We noticed that one of the market trends that were notified by the majority of NRAs was the significant increase in fraudulent traffic and scams, which might have a negative impact on end users' rights. Hence, while shaping this year's program, we decided to delve deeper into that and included a project on the workshop that needs to start delving deeper into that. So a bit of numbers of our workshop. It was in May 21st. It was the hybrid event. Hence, we reached quite a significant number of participants, more than 230 on-site as well as online. And we were happy that we managed to gather 20 speakers to talk and to cover various aspects on them. During our event, we wanted not to only to see the trends and possible technical solutions. We wanted to delve into a variety of angles that are related. First of all, well, setting the scene. Hence, we had those 4 sessions and discussions from various angles and various points related to that, the topic. So in the we had 4 sessions there. So first one, setting the scene. Then we wanted to have and to see what is the stakeholders' approach and perspective on the matter. We wanted also to have NRAs which also already started taking actions on various angles in regulatory and technical perspective. And we also had panel discussion which gathered not only telcos markets usual representatives, but also we were proud that we managed to gather also financial sector representatives, or as well as enforcement entities in the capacity of Europol. So we had quite a number of participants, and it's worth noting that from a stakeholders' perspective, we also had not only our traditional telcos, but we also invited, and we were happy to have on our workshop gatekeepers, as well as SMS aggregators, because we understand that fraudulent activities are usually of a complex value chain, and every participant there takes part in it and takes some part of liability. And what it is most important here, one of the aspects here, that sometimes countries, stakeholders felt alone with the problem. This workshop served as one of the places for them to gather, to see, and we even that they are not alone, to delve and to discuss what actions worked, what should be fine-tuned, and what is not relevant to combat the fraudulent activities that are existing, evolving, and so here was the floor to discuss the issues, to discuss and to share various exchange formats and various places where all the stakeholders could discuss those issues and seek for solutions. And although we see variety of people and variety angles that were touched upon, we somehow, the key messages were quite repetitive ones, and these will be presented by Marina.
Thank you, Indre. Well, we highlighted here a few key messages. Because as Indre already said, we had many stakeholders' point of view, and we identified that manipulation fraud is more than 50% of payment fraud. Having that in mind, we have to acknowledge that sometimes it works, okay. That sometimes we have to be aware that we have a people on the other side. So there is a financial and emotional toll on victims, which is very high. And they often feel very ashamed that we found out on this workshop, and they don't want to talk about it. So that is something that we also have to be aware in the future. Also, we identified that there are a few sectoral challenges that has to be addressed. Basically, what we know and what we found out, that we have a know-how. And now we just have to collaborate and we have to exchange that knowledge. So cross-border and cross-sectoral challenges are most significant one, because as telcos and NRAs, we know our thing, but we also have to be aware that there are some solutions and practices in other sectoral legislation, which is very important. Also, what we have to have in mind that fraudsters are very active and they move very fast. So we have to do it also, and we have to be reactive. We have to move fast. What I already mentioned, what is one of the key messages, collaboration and transparency, and of course the best sharing practices, which we already mentioned. What is also important is that, well, we have all that regulations, but we must ensure that regulations are holistic, so that every bullet point, every part of the value chain has to know their responsibilities and their obligations. And of course, we have to have harmonized frameworks. That means that we already have some adequate legislation, but we have to have adequate transposition, which is harmonized under the national laws. But of course, on the other hand, we have to have point of flexibility in these approaches, because we have to move fast, we have to know how to react quickly. That's why we have to have a little dose of flexibility. Maybe just to summarize what is said, of course, we talked about the solutions on our workshop, and what I already said, collaboration is the key among cross-border and cross-sectoral parts, and of course adequate enforcement of legislation, which I already said. So we want to prevent legislative fragmentation, legal loopholes, and of course to resume with harmonization and flexibility. And that is something that will give us effective detection of fraudulent activities in the beginning. So not just to catch the fire at the end, but in the beginning to try to detect something that is suspicious. So these are not only technical solutions, but also know your customer, which is very important. So we heard about technical solutions, but of course there are legal requirements, and not to forget something that is very important, but that is raising awareness. So raising awareness among end users is a key. Together with victim support, which I already said, that victims are feeling ashamed. So we have to listen to end users and maybe organize on the national level some specialized call centers or something like that, which can help them. And we have to raise that awareness. Having that in mind, we had Slido questions on our workshop, and one of the questions was which stakeholder should take the lead in combating fraud, and the most significant answer was national regulators. So having in mind that BEREC is a place where all the NRAs are gathering together, from the end user's part, we can do our part in best practice sharing and of course raising awareness to end users, which we mentioned several times, and we are planning to do so in the future. So stay tuned, because we will have a communication campaign together with the communications team of BEREC. And the aim of this campaign will be to raise awareness for the end users. So it will be something that will be useful for all of you to share among your end users and just to pay forward. So to conclude, it is proven that there is a need for periodical external workshops, because we are free to talk about things and to share our knowledge, because I already said we have know-how, we just have to talk about it and share knowledge among us. So thank you for your time, and I'm passing the floor to BEREC chairs again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Indra and Marina. Please stay with us for the questions that will follow soon. Next, though, I want to give a short update on a few other items of importance. I told you that in advance, and then we can have our Q&A session. First thing is that at P3 we had the usual election of the chair for the year after next. So for 2027, Ms. Alejandra de Iturriaga Gandini from the CNMC has been elected as chair of BEREC. And as per normal, there will be then next year a troika consisting out of Marco, Mrs. Alejandra de Iturriaga and myself. That's the troika. And then we also had a election process for a number of additional vice chairs. And next year we will have a few more vice chairs than normal, because we are expecting a very busy year and we want to divide the work a bit more. And these people are, first of all, Mr. Giacomo La Sorella, president of Agicom in Italy, Ms. Sarah Jacquier-Pellissier, who is a member of the board of ARCEP, then Mr. Michel van Bellingen, chairman of the Council of BIPT here in Belgium, Mr. Klaus Steinmauer, who is the Executive Director of RTR in Austria, and finally Mr. Milan Radulovic, who is the President of the Council of EKIP in Montenegro. He is the representative of our participants without voting rights, all on the, well, it's no longer a mini board, more like a maxi board, but that is the group of people that will lead BEREC next year. Then we had 3 workshops with the European Commission earlier this year. One, a more general review of the code on the 31st of March. We spent the whole day talking about different aspects of the code and what our, you know, our strategic views were in terms of what needed to be adapted and changed. From the Commission side, we had very high level participation, and all the BEREC members at the highest level were represented as well. Then on the 15th of July, we had a workshop on what we call governance. That's basically the question, what will BEREC look like in the future? And discussing pros and cons of different models, and discussing what the scope of BEREC should be, what we should be doing. And then finally, on the 18th of September, we had a workshop in which we had participation of some experts from the regulators as well, because that was on access regulation, and we talked in depth for half a day about specifically that topic. I think we were very happy as BEREC that we got this opportunity, and the discussion with the Commission was actually very positive and very, we didn't agree on everything, but it was good that we could have that discussion. Then, a couple of weeks ago, we went on our annual study trip. We didn't want to go to the United States, given the political situation at the moment. We opted for a study trip to the UK. And we met Ofcom, their Digital Regulation Cooperation Forum, the Alan Turing Institute, for those who don't know it. That is an institute, a government-based institute dealing with AI in particular. We met the UK government, one of their departments, British Telecom, and the Alternative Competitive Telecommunications Association. I think it was an eye-opener for a couple of reasons, or an eye-opener. It was very positive for a couple of reasons. A, we heard more about the merger decision between Vodafone and Three, and the thinking behind that within Ofcom and the competition authorities, which was very helpful to know. We also got a better understanding of the situation of the market in the UK that made such a merger, and the remedies that came with that merger made a lot more sense once you know the UK market a bit better, and we heard that. The other thing that we discussed a lot was, of course, Ofcom's approach to the market and how they, with their plans, want to regulate. And since the regulatory framework is almost identical still with that of the EU, it is very interesting to see what Ofcom is doing. Also, you can see quite a few things there about AI. The UK government has made it a priority for the UK government to stimulate AI, and it's very interesting to see how they do that and what kind of the thinking is. So we've learned a lot on that. Then the next is the that we have a number of upcoming public workshops in Q4. I think we can go to the next slide. We have a joint BEREC and BEUC workshop on end-user rights, which takes place on the 15th of October, and registration is still open, so if you're interested in that, do register. We will also have an external workshop on submarine connectivity, mainly focusing on market dynamics, regulatory approaches and challenges, and that will take place on Tuesday the 9th of December, as far as I know. Then the next BEREC Stakeholder Forum, put that in your diary already, will take place on the 31st of March next year here in Brussels. Further announcements to follow. Then, just as one of the final slides from my side, some documents, other documents that were approved and published over the recent past. That is our input on the European Commission's call for evidence on the DNA. That was published on the 11th of July. BEREC's input to the Commission's public consultation on the review of the merger guidelines. We put a response in there. And then input on the public consultation from the Commission on the DMA review. That was sent out on the 24th of September. And then a revision of the recommendation on relevant markets, which was sent out very recently on the 30th of September. And I think we already mentioned that in one of the questions. Then BEREC's opinion on the Commission's delegated regulation setting a single maximum union-wide MTR and FTR. We talked about that. That was published on the 5th of October. And then finally, we are putting together input for the European Commission's call for evidence on the Digital Fairness Act, and that will be finalized on the 24th of October. And I also would like to remind you that, of course, as mentioned earlier by Marco, that we have an open public consultation at the moment on our draft work program for 2026, and the deadline there is the 3rd of November. With that all said, we can go to the second round of Q&A. And are there any questions from within this room? First Yves, and then we go to Tony. Oh, I just do it in the order of who was first.
I got the conch. So it's a quick question. So just, you didn't mention the consultation on GIA, and just after Francois' presentations on Article 5 and 11, did BEREC give an input to the consultation that was run on Article 3? And did you have a view on that, I suppose? And I suppose also, while I'm asking, are you going to give an input on the digital omnibus that the Commission's running as well? Sorry, thank you.
Okay, and then next is Yves.
Thank you. Yves Blondel of T-Regs. I have a question to the organizers of the workshop on fraud and scams. Towards the end, you mentioned that BEREC will take some initiatives. I was not totally clear on what that implied. Is BEREC going to communicate with the general public? Is it going to present materials that NRAs can communicate to the general public, both, or what's the awareness campaign precisely about?
Thank you. And I'm just looking around now. Let's answer those questions. And I'm first going here to Francois. If you can answer the following questions. One is, are we thinking of doing something with Article 3 of GIA? And there is also a question that we got online. That question is, which are the countries where in-building infrastructure is owned by the electronic communications network?
I'll start with the second one. I don't remember. It's only a few. I cannot remember. It was from the public consultation in 2024 that we got this insight, but what we mostly retained from that public consultation was that in almost all countries it was for free because it was owned by the building owner, and that's why we decided to take this as a recommended rule in the guidelines. I invite you to look at each specific national regulation. And in fact, it's not really electronic communication regulation. It's more property right topic. Regarding BEREC's role on Article 3, as you have seen in the GIA itself, the contrary to Article 5 and 11, it's up to the Commission to write in close cooperation with BEREC these guidelines. So at this stage, they have issued a questionnaire addressed mostly to the industry, but also to NRAs, DSBs, and so on. We had a few exchanges with them while they were designing this questionnaire. We thought about answering it, but when we read the questionnaire, we felt that it was more, by its design, it called more for individual responses from NRAs or DSBs than BEREC response. So there was no BEREC response on this questionnaire. So now the Commission is going to read all these answers and start designing its guidance. And while when they have read everything and they start designing their guidance, they will exchange directly with us. We have a dedicated team for this workflow, and we will keep this team for next year so that we are able to provide direct inputs.
Thank you, François. Now we can go to the chairs of the end user working group for the question from.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you for the question. It's good that we have to repeat it because we are very proud of this initiative. Well, basically, as you heard, we identified that raising awareness is one of the key aspects that we have to address in the future. So when we look at BEREC and NRAs, of course, we do a lot of work towards stakeholders and the industry. But one of the work is also to talk to end users directly. And that is the initiative that I'm talking about. So we are planning a campaign together with a communications team of BEREC, who is basically doing the most of the work, but of course together with us, co-chairs and BEREC in general. And we will try to address directly end users and problems that they have. And we will talk to them basically about preventive measures that they can do and also give some advices to end users. And what is interesting for you here is basically to forward everything that you see on the BEREC website regarding this subject. So we will publish advices, we will publish some preventive measures that end users can use in dealing with fraudulent activities. So you can forward, you can use it in your NRAs at your work. So something that is currently shaping, so we don't have additional data, but stay tuned and you will see, because it will be a major and interesting campaign, because you know we are all end users and we all have to repeat this, because sometimes we are also the victims of frauders, and we heard that on our workshop. So unfortunately, I don't know whether you attended online, but if you haven't, we have a next workshop, so it will be also interesting subject that you can hear and also participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina. A couple of more questions that were answered and that were asked and that I need to answer. So the question from Tony on the digital omnibus. We looked at the content of that and what areas were mentioned, and we decided that that was not in our wheelhouse. So we just decided not to respond to that. I guess that there will be a lot of simplification in the DNA and that is far more relevant for us. But this omnibus did not offer anything that is really relevant to BEREC. So that is one question. I have to clarify one more thing. The question that was asked in the previous Q&A on network slicing, that public consultation will launch after P2, so after the second plenary, sometime in June. Then we received a question that read, how can BEREC stipulate technology-neutral broadband policies in Europe in 2026 and beyond? We've always done our work on a technology-neutral basis, and the tools well, next year they won't change all that much. I would say we will see what the DNA does. But we do that in a context, and we do that in the context of the EU strongly pushing the digital decade targets, which is fiber and 5G. And we are totally technology neutral, but if you see fiber being rolled out left and center, it is not always easy for some other technologies to compete, but we are not actively trying to stop them. We're trying to let as many flowers bloom, but market reality is often, of course, slightly different if you see fiber everywhere. Then finally, a question that came to us via the chat that reads, as networks expand, get physical upgrades like 5G, fiber and high capacity routes, the need for improved software increases as well. However, such improvements like IP version 6 deployment are lagging behind, which is negatively affecting the EU's innovation and digital sector. Can BEREC comment on this? What can I say? We are not actively looking at all the different bits. We haven't received any specific complaints about this either, but if this were to become a real issue, then we will look at that, no doubt. But at the moment, some of those points you mentioned, like IP version 6, that hasn't been on my radar for a while now. So if there are specific issues, then we'd like to hear from that and we can assess where we stand. Any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, no, just a comment, Robert, on the digital decade targets. So you mentioned fiber and 5G, but in fact the target is gigabits, and VHC and DOCSIS, HFC DOCSIS is considered a gigabit-proof network. So until, let's say, the KPIs are changed, I would say we can still consider other technologies, networks.
You are absolutely right, and I stand to be corrected, but reality is sometimes a bit different from the theory, but you're 100% right. Okay, are there any other questions? If not, I'm going to wrap up, and can I ask your attention for one last thing, and that is that we are doing a survey with regard to our BEREC communication strategy and practices. They can be found on that web address. So if you feel that we could do better or we should do something different in terms of our communications, we haven't talked about this, I think, since 2018 or so. But please let us know. We're very interested in your opinions, and again, it can be found on that web address. And the slides, of course, are all available online if you want to look at that. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for those participants who watched online. And I hope to see you again virtually in December after P4. See you then. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.